In his recent video, Philosophical Maps, Pyrrho brought up the fact that after a year or two, most people with YouTube channels burn out and close their channels or become inactive. He attributes this in part to how it's easy to become disillusioned with YouTube. Suppose you began your channel to promote one central idea that you cared a lot about, and you find that YouTube is indifferent or even hostile to that idea. In defending your position, you begin to see YouTube as a brutal battlefield where there can be only one winner in any exchange. Your view of YouTube, and this can even be extended to your thinking of life itself, is that it's a finite, zero-sum game. If you're convinced that there can be only one winner in an exchange, it's easy to struggle for victory and make that your primary motivation. But maybe that strategy has built-in problems. It can make you incapable of actually hearing what other people are saying to you, for example. If, however, you realize that YouTube, and again by extension to life itself, can under the right circumstances be seen as a positive-sum game, you're more likely to find yourself open to new ideas and to what other people are actually saying. You'll be less likely to claim to have all the answers and more willing to explore possibilities with curiosity and enthusiasm. In other words, you're more likely to see that it's possible to play an infinite game. Playing an infinite game does not mean that you think you'll personally play the game forever. Of course not. You'll age and die like all living things. It means instead that you'll play the game of life not to struggle to the death or as a way to silence or destroy anyone who disagrees with you. No, you'll play because you're curious about the way the game evolves and in the ways that make it more humane and more engaging. In other words, you won't take everything too seriously, not because you don't care about suffering and injustice in the world, but because you're wise enough to know that the way to change those things in the future might not depend on who can be punished and ridiculed the most. Studies have shown that brutality and punishment often don't change behavior. Instead, when we're given a positive chance to learn from mistakes and see why we made them, we're likely to have more complex reactions and to really make changes. In a non-threatening environment, we're more likely to ask ourselves what precisely went wrong and how can we improve those things in the future. If you think of the situation slightly differently, you might find that you'll begin to see what happens in a different light and even begin to enjoy the process of asking the questions. As Einstein wisely phrased it, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Or as one of my favorite writers, Luke Rhinehold, phrased the same idea in a slightly grittier way, the whole tendency of the human personality is to solidify into the corpse. You don't change corpses. Corpses aren't bubbling with enthusiasm. You spruce them up a bit and make them fit to look at. It makes you stop and think that the old cliche, change or die, might hold more truth than is apparent at first. That's why it's important to play the long game, the infinite game, and not waste your time on hollow victories of one ego over another. Thanks for listening.